She stood at the entrance of the wedding hall. Her white dress sparkled under the lights. A long veil hung behind her, but it wasn't her dress people noticed. It was the smooth white mask covering her face. A mask without emotion. A mask that hid everything. People stared in silence. Some whispered. Some looked confused. Others were simply stunned. They had never seen a bride like this. A bride who refused to show her face. No one knew her story. No one knew why she wore that mask. But they all felt something. It wasn't fear. It wasn't judgment. It was something deeper. Something hard to explain. She took slow steps forward. Calm. Silent. Eyes looking ahead. She didn't shake. She didn't smile. She walked like someone who had waited years for this moment. Her beauty was a secret. And that secret was heavy. She wasn't born to wear a mask. But life had made her wear one. As a child, people praised her too much. Strangers on the street stopped to admire her. Adults gave her gifts just because she was pretty. Boys followed her. Girls grew jealous. Teachers smiled more at her. Everyone looked, but no one ever listened. She began to feel empty. Like her words didn't matter. Only her face did. People liked her before they even knew her. And once they saw her, they expected her to be perfect. She was tired. Tired of being noticed for the wrong reasons. Tired of fake love. Tired of lies. So she made a choice. She decided to cover what the world loved most, her face. She started wearing a mask. At first, they laughed. Her parents scolded her. Her friends stopped calling. But she didn't stop. The mask gave her peace. It kept the noise away. It helped her see who really cared. She promised herself one thing: she would never remove that mask until someone fell in love with her without ever seeing her face. She was no ordinary woman. And this was no ordinary love story. Alina didn't wear the mask because she was ashamed. She wore it because she was tired. Tired of being chased for the wrong reasons. Tired of people falling in love with her face, not her heart. As a teenager, she had faced it all. Boys who wrote poems without knowing her favorite color. Teachers who gave her better grades just to impress her parents. Women who smiled in public but called her names behind her back. People treated her like a prize, not a person. At home, it wasn't any better. Her family came from money and status. Her parents believed in power, appearance, and keeping their name clean. They raised her to stay perfect. "You are beautiful, Alina," her mother would say. "Don't waste it." Her father reminded her, "Men want women like you. Don't make things complicated." But Alina didn't want to be a trophy. She wanted to be heard, not just seen. She wanted to laugh without being watched. To cry without being judged. And more than anything, she wanted love that wasn't blind to everything except her face. So one day, she took a deep breath and wore the mask. Not just a small cover. A full one. Clean. Plain. Emotionless. It was her new face. She wore it to college. She wore it to dinner. She wore it to her cousin's wedding. The reactions were always the same: shocked faces, rude comments, curious stares. People called her dramatic, mentally sick, even rebellious. But she stayed silent. Every time someone tried to remove it, she stepped away. Every time someone asked why, she replied softly, "I'm waiting for someone who can see me, even without seeing my face." Her family hated it. Her mother cried. Her father shouted. Her sister called her selfish. They begged her to stop the nonsense. But Alina kept wearing it. Because deep down, she knew only someone with a true heart would ever reach behind that mask. She watched others fall in love, post pictures, plan weddings. She didn't envy them. She waited. She hoped. She believed. And one ordinary day, in a place far from her rich life, her story took a quiet but powerful turn. It was a cloudy afternoon. Alina had escaped the noise of her home once again. She didn't go to fancy malls or parties anymore. Instead, she found peace in quiet corners of the city, old bookstores, public parks, and one small community library tucked between narrow streets. She walked in slowly, as always, wearing her mask. The librarian looked up, recognized her, and smiled politely. Alina nodded back and made her way to the far end of the room. She loved this place. No one bothered her here. No one asked questions. She was just another person surrounded by silence and stories. But today, someone new was there. A man stood by the last shelf, holding a book. He wasn't tall. He wasn't flashy. His clothes were simple. His shoes slightly worn. His skin was dark, his expression calm. There was something warm about him, something soft in his eyes. As Alina reached for a book, their hands touched the same spine. "Oh, sorry," she said, forgetting that no one could see her smile behind the mask. He looked at her and chuckled. "No worries. It's a good one. I've read it twice." She nodded. He didn't ask about the mask. Didn't stare. Didn't try to guess who she was. They sat at separate tables, but every now and then, she glanced at him. And sometimes, he glanced back. There was no pressure. No fake charm. Just two people sharing space. After a while, he walked past her table and whispered with a grin, "That mask suits you. Makes you look like a mystery novel." For the first time in days, she laughed. A real laugh. Small, but real. The next day, she came again. So did he. They didn't plan it. It just happened. A few words turned into longer chats. Days turned into weeks. And the library, once her quiet escape, became the place where her heart slowly began to open. He never asked her to remove the mask. He never looked uncomfortable. He talked to her like she was normal. Like the mask didn't matter. Like he could already see something others missed. And that was the first time Alina felt truly seen. The library became their little world. No loud music. No rich people pretending. Just two souls talking about life, books, and little dreams. His name was Daniel. He came from a simple background. He lived with his mother in a small apartment nearby. He worked part-time during the day and studied at night. He didn't have much, but he had peace in his voice. He spoke gently, listened deeply, and laughed without holding back. Alina never told him who she was. Not her last name. Not her family status. Not the reason behind the mask. And Daniel never asked. They talked about books. About favorite stories and why some endings felt real. He told her how he liked stories where the underdog wins. Where the one who's overlooked surprises everyone. Sometimes they sat in silence too. Comfortable silence. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that feels like home. One afternoon, it started raining outside. Alina got up to leave, but Daniel stopped her. "I have an umbrella," he said, lifting it with a smile. She hesitated. No one had walked her home in years. Not like this. Not without expecting something. But she agreed. They walked slowly through the quiet streets. She didn't speak much, and neither did he. But she could feel something. A calmness. A safety. As they reached her car, he turned and said, "Thanks for sharing the rain with me." She paused. Then asked softly, "Why don't you ever ask about the mask?" He shrugged. "We all wear something to protect ourselves. Some just make it more visible." Her chest tightened. In a good way. It was the first time someone didn't try to fix her, or change her. Day by day, their bond grew. No pressure. No rules. Just two people finding comfort in each other. And even though she still wore the mask, Alina had started showing her real self. Alina had never felt this before. She had talked to many people in her life. But this was different. With Daniel, she didn't have to pretend. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't even have to be beautiful. Because he wasn't chasing her looks. He was listening to her thoughts. But that scared her. Every night, she wondered. What if he's just being kind? What if he finds out who I really am and changes? What if I remove the mask and he walks away like the rest? So Alina started testing him. She showed up late one day, just to see if he'd get upset. He didn't. He simply smiled and said, "I'm glad you came." Another time, she told him she might not be fun to be around. He replied, "I like quiet company. It speaks more than noise." Once, she even pretended to forget their meeting. When she showed up the next day, Daniel was there. Still waiting. Still smiling. "Some people are worth waiting for," he said. Each time, she gave him a reason to leave. And each time, he stayed. Alina also began opening up, little by little. She told him she came from a family that didn't understand her. That she felt trapped in a life she didn't choose. That she wore the mask not for fashion, but for peace. Daniel didn't judge her. He didn't ask for more than she gave. He just listened. Then one evening, she asked the question that had been haunting her. "What if I'm not who you think I am?" Daniel looked at her for a moment. Then said softly, "I don't think you're anyone but yourself. That's more than enough." His words sat with her. They didn't sound like poetry. They sounded like truth. That night, Alina stood in front of her mirror, touched the mask, and whispered, "Maybe, it's time." But not yet. She still needed one more sign. One more moment to be sure. Because when you've been loved for the wrong reasons all your life, real love feels too good to trust. The days turned into weeks. And weeks into quiet seasons. Alina and Daniel grew closer with every passing moment. They met often. Sometimes at the library. Sometimes at the park. Sometimes they just walked aimlessly, sharing simple stories. No gifts. No pressure. No lies. But one evening, as they sat by a lake watching the sky turn orange, Daniel went quiet. His hands trembled slightly. He looked nervous. Then he said something that made Alina freeze. "I don't know what you look like. And I don't need to know. But I do know how you make me feel. And I've never felt this way before, with anyone." Alina looked away. Daniel continued, "I've met many people who spoke loudly but said nothing. You say little, but I feel everything. I'm not asking to see your face. I just needed to tell you." For a moment, the world was still. Alina's heart pounded. Her eyes filled with tears. She had waited so long for someone like him. Someone who wasn't chasing a pretty smile. Someone who saw more than the surface. And here he was, real, honest, imperfect, and beautiful in his own way. She wanted to remove the mask right then. But fear held her back. What if everything changed? So she simply whispered, "Thank you." They sat in silence after that. But it wasn't empty. It was full of something deep. Something stronger than words. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She stood in her room, looking at the mask in the mirror. The same mask that had protected her for years. The same one that had kept others away, and led Daniel close. She reached behind her ears and slowly removed it. For the first time in years, her face was bare in front of the world. Her own eyes stared back at her. Scared. Hopeful. Ready. She held the mask in her hands and whispered, "Tomorrow. I show him the truth." The next day came slowly. Alina felt nervous. Her hands were cold. Her heart beat faster than ever before. She had waited years for this moment. Today, she would show Daniel her face. Not because he asked. Not because he needed proof. But because he had earned her trust. He had loved her without ever seeing her. They met at their usual spot under the old tree near the edge of the park. The sky was calm. The wind soft. Daniel arrived with his usual smile. But this time, Alina wasn't wearing the mask. He paused when he saw her. His eyes widened slightly. Not in shock. Not in awe. Just stillness. She stood there, bare, open, real. This was the face so many had chased. The face people had called perfect. The one that had made her feel like an object. But now, it wasn't about beauty. It was about trust. Daniel didn't say anything at first. He looked at her the same way he always did. Calm. Gentle. With kindness. Then, after a long moment, he spoke. I knew you were beautiful, he said softly. But now I see, the outside finally matches the soul I've always seen. Alina's eyes filled with tears. She had feared judgment. She had feared change. But nothing changed. Not in his voice. Not in his gaze. Not in the way he stood beside her. Daniel didn't step closer out of excitement. He didn't step back out of fear. He simply stayed there, where he had always been. Then he smiled. Thank you for showing me your face. But more than that, thank you for trusting me with your heart. They sat together, speaking very little. But everything was said. In the silence. In the softness. In the way he still looked at her like nothing had changed. And in that moment, Alina knew. She was finally free. Alina had been careful. She had hidden her happiness from her family. She knew how they thought. She knew what they valued as status, race, class, reputation. Not love. Not kindness. But joy has a way of slipping through. A small smile. A soft hum. A glow in the eyes. And slowly, her parents began to notice. One evening, during dinner, her mother spoke. You've been smiling a lot these days. Are you seeing someone? Alina paused. Her fork hung in the air. Her father looked up from his plate. She replied quietly, yes. Silence fell across the table. Who is he? Her mother asked. Her voice was flat, careful. His name is Daniel, Alina said. He's gentle. Honest. And he sees me for who I am. Her sister leaned forward. Where is he from? What does his family do? Alina swallowed. He lives in the city. He takes care of his mother. He works. He's a good man. Her father's tone changed. What does he look like? Alina hesitated. She knew what was coming. But she refused to lie. He's black, she said softly. And he has the most beautiful heart I've ever known. There was silence again, but not quiet. It was the heavy kind. The kind that fills a room with anger. Her father stood up sharply. His voice rose. You brought shame to this house. Do you know what people will say? Her mother shouted, You're our daughter. How can you fall for someone like him? Her sister mocked, so that's why you wore the mask? To protect a relationship like this? Alina stood her ground. Her voice calm, but firm. I wore the mask because of people like you. People who only see skin, not soul. Her father pointed to the door. You either leave him. Or you leave this house. Tears filled her mother's eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness, they were pride and prejudice. Alina's hands shook. But her heart didn't. I will not leave love behind just to stay in a house full of hate, she said. She left the room. Left the mansion. Left the name, the money, the comfort. And as the door shut behind her, she whispered to herself, they may have built this home, but I'm building a life. Alina walked out of her family's home with nothing but her handbag and the weight of a broken heart. No one stopped her. Not her mother. Not her sister. Not even her father. They let her go. Just like that. It was late evening. The streets were quiet. But inside her, everything was loud. Memories. Words. Pain. Fear. And somewhere beneath all of that, strength. She didn't cry. Not yet. Because she had made a choice. A clear one. She chose love. Not a perfect life. Not comfort. Not money. Just real, honest love. Daniel opened the door, surprised to see her standing there in the dark. Her eyes looked tired, but her voice was steady. They know, she said softly. He understood right away. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask why. He just opened his arms. She fell into them, and only then, the tears came. They sat on the floor of his small apartment, wrapped in silence. No bed of roses. No grand promises. Just two people, holding each other, after the world had pushed them down. Daniel made her tea. She looked around, the place was small, but warm. A few books. A photo of his mother. A worn-out rug. A window with city lights peeking in. This is home now, Alina whispered. He nodded. It always was. The next few days were hard. Her family didn't call. She was removed from the family's business profile. Her mother blocked her on every platform. Her sister spread lies about Daniel. But Alina didn't go back. She didn't defend herself. Because she wasn't ashamed. People began to talk. Friends distanced themselves. Relatives shook their heads. But none of it broke her. Instead, it made her stronger. Daniel stood by her side through it all. He never complained. Never blamed her. Instead, he said, love is not built in peace. It's proven in storms. And they stood in that storm, together. One cold evening, Daniel didn't come home on time. He had gone out for groceries. Just a short walk to the nearby market. Nothing unusual. But an hour passed. Then two. No call. No message. Alina's hands started shaking. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. She tried calling. No answer. Then, her phone rang. An unknown number. A stranger's voice. Are you related to Daniel? He's been hurt. She rushed to the hospital, her heart beating louder than the sirens around her. When she saw him, lying unconscious on a hospital bed, her knees gave out. His face was bruised. His lip cut. His shirt stained with blood. She whispered his name again and again. Daniel. Daniel, please, the doctor told her he had been attacked by 3 men. They had followed him from the market. No money was taken. No phone. It wasn't a robbery. It was hate. The nurse added quietly, it looked like it was personal. Like they wanted to send a message. Alina didn't need an explanation. This was because of her. Because of them. Because she dared to love someone her family would never accept. She held his hand all night, refusing to leave his side. She remembered his words from just days ago, love is proven in storms. And now, the storm had come. Violent. Cruel. Unfair. The police came, asked questions. She gave them everything. But deep down, she knew, even if they found the attackers, the scars would remain. She posted nothing online. Said nothing to the media. But someone else did. A hospital worker had filmed her crying at his bedside. The video leaked online. And within 24 hours, the world would react. The video was less than a minute long. It showed Alina sitting beside Daniel's hospital bed. Her head lowered. Her eyes filled with tears. Her hand tightly holding his. No makeup. No designer clothes. No mask. Just a woman in pain, loving someone the world tried to break. The clip was uploaded by a nurse who had seen the attack report and recognized Alina's last name. It was posted with a simple caption, "They tried to break him, but she stayed." In hours, the video spread across social media. People began asking questions. Who is she? Why was he attacked? Is this the girl from that wealthy family? Some defended her. Some blamed her. But most were touched. Because the world wasn't looking at a rich girl and a poor boy anymore. They were seeing love. Raw. Honest. Undeniable. Journalists picked up the story. Blogs wrote headlines like, "She wore a mask to hide her beauty, now she shows her face to stand for love." Daughter of a wealthy tycoon in love with a black man attacked for dating her. And suddenly, the silence around Alina's family shattered. Their business was tagged. Their photos were posted. Their racist comments from the past began to resurface. Old staff came forward with stories. The public was watching now, and they weren't staying quiet. Meanwhile, Alina stayed at Daniel's side. She didn't care about the news. She cared about the steady sound of his heartbeat on the monitor. About his breathing. About him opening his eyes. Which he finally did, 3 days later. He blinked, looked around, and whispered, "You stayed," she nodded, holding his hand tighter. Always. Daniel didn't know what had happened outside. But Alina did. The world was beginning to see them. Not just for how they looked. But for what they stood for. The world had seen the pain. Now, it wanted justice. The video sparked protests online. Hashtags flooded the platforms. Hashtag justice for Daniel, hashtag love is not crime, hashtag unmask the hate. People from around the country began sharing their own stories of being judged for who they loved. Of facing racism, of choosing the heart over skin. Within days, lawyers reached out. Activists offered support. News anchors debated the case on TV. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Alina stayed calm. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She simply told the truth. "I didn't choose Daniel because he was different. I chose him because he's kind. Because he listened when no one else did. Because he saw me, even behind a mask." Daniel was released from the hospital. He was weaker, but his spirit stayed strong. He didn't complain. He didn't want revenge. But he agreed to let justice be served. The police investigated. With public pressure rising, the case couldn't be buried. 2 of the attackers were caught. And what shocked everyone was that one of them worked for Alina's family. The news exploded. People now connected the attack directly to her background. Her father's name trended for days, not for power, but for shame. Alina's father tried to deny everything. "We had nothing to do with this," he said to reporters. But no one believed him anymore. His silence when Alina left. His past remarks. His known views. They spoke louder than words. Business partners began cutting ties. Investors pulled back. The company's reputation crumbled. And through it all, Alina didn't return home. She stayed in Daniel's small apartment. She helped him recover. She held his hand through pain. And reminded him every day, "You're not alone anymore." Then, one morning, as they sipped tea near the window, Daniel looked at her and said, "If I asked you to marry me right now, would you say yes?" Alina smiled. "I'd say yes, even before you finish asking." The world had tried to break them. Instead, it brought them closer. The decision was made quietly. There was no grand proposal. No crowd. No spotlight. Just 2 people who had already promised each other everything, long before any ring. Alina and Daniel chose to get married in a small community center, not far from the library where they first met. The same place where she had once hidden behind silence and pages, and where he had spoken to her like she was normal, not mysterious. They wanted something simple. Real. Nothing borrowed, nothing gold. Just vows. Just truth. The news of their upcoming wedding spread faster than they expected. Not through gossip, but through admiration. People from all walks of life messaged them. Some sent flowers. Some sent kind words. Strangers who had never met them offered to help. A retired tailor offered to stitch her dress. A local bakery promised to make the cake for free. One message stood out. A woman wrote, "I've worn a mask too. Not on my face, but in my heart. Watching you gave me courage to take it off." Alina read it 3 times, then sat in silence. She had once worn a mask to hide from love. Now her story was helping others step into it. The wedding day arrived. The hall was decorated with white flowers and candles. No red carpets. No rich guests. Just real people. Smiling. Cheering. Clapping. Alina wore a plain white dress. Her face was uncovered. Her eyes were bright. Her steps were steady. Daniel stood at the front, wearing a borrowed suit and the biggest smile he had ever worn. They held hands. Said their vows. Promised forever, not just in health, but also in healing. And just when the crowd thought everything was over, a sound of footsteps echoed at the back. Alina turned. It was her father. Everyone turned to look. Silence swept across the room. Alina's father stood at the entrance, dressed in his usual expensive suit, but this time, he looked smaller, older, and lost. He held no flowers. He wore no smile. Just heavy eyes that had seen too much and understood too late. Alina froze. Her breath caught. Her fingers trembled in Daniel's hand. For a moment, no one moved. Not even him. Then, slowly, he walked down the aisle. Step by step. Past the guests. Past the decorations. Toward his daughter. When he stopped in front of her, his lips trembled. His voice cracked. "I was wrong." He looked at Daniel. "I didn't see you. I saw your skin. I judged you before knowing your heart. And I hurt my own daughter because of it." He turned back to Alina. "I raised you to be strong. But you became stronger than I ever imagined. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't listen." Tears filled Alina's eyes. The room held its breath. "I can't erase what I've said," he added. "But if you'll let me, I'd like to stand with you today. As your father. Not as a man of wealth. Just as a man who failed and is ready to learn." The silence broke with sniffles from guests. Someone wiped their eyes. Another quietly clapped. Daniel gave Alina a gentle look. She could see it in his eyes. "It's your choice." Alina stepped forward. She looked at her father, this man who had once thrown her out for choosing love. She took a deep breath and hugged him. Tightly. Not because everything was healed, but because something had finally begun to change. He whispered into her ear, "You found the right man. I'm proud of the woman behind the mask." Alina smiled. For the first time, that word, proud, felt real. She didn't need his approval anymore. But she had his presence. And that was a start. The ceremony continued. But now, it wasn't just a wedding. It was a message. A message that love, when pure, doesn't need permission. That kindness is more powerful than pride. That beauty is not in the face, but in the heart that stays when the world walks away. As Alina and Daniel exchanged their final vows, the guests stood, not out of tradition, but respect. Her family didn't lead her down the aisle. But they were there when she walked back, not alone, but hand in hand with the man she chose for love, not looks. In the weeks that followed, change began. Her father stepped down from his company. Not because he had to, but because he needed to learn. He started working with community groups to undo the very mindset he once helped spread. Alina's mother reached out. Not with anger, but with a trembling voice that simply said, "I miss you. I want to understand." Even her sister, who once laughed at Daniel's complexion, came to visit. She brought flowers and sat for hours, asking about their story, truly listening for the first time. Alina and Daniel didn't become celebrities. They didn't want fame. But their story spread far beyond what they imagined. It was shared in classrooms, in coffee shops, in homes where love had once been judged. And slowly, hearts began to soften. Alina never wore the mask again. Because she no longer had to hide. Not from others. Not from herself. And Daniel, the man once ignored by the world, was now the reason it had changed for the better. Their love didn't change everything overnight. But it started something. Something honest. Something brave. And sometimes, that's all it takes. If you believe love should be colorblind, heart deep, and fearless, don't forget to share this story. And subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories that matter.